Global Order. I'm Hindul Gupta. I'm joined today by the researcher, analyst, and author Francesca Marino. Ms. Marino is a long-standing observer, writer, and researcher on the Balochistan issue or the Baloch liberation movement in Pakistan. She joins me today to talk about her work and indeed how she reads the latest developments that's happening in the Baloch liberation movement after the hijacking of an entire train. And even as I speak, news has come that actually probably the Baloch Liberation Army has eliminated the hostages it took after the Pakistani army refused to get into a negotiation and exchange and conducted and started a major military assault on the Baloch rebels. What's really going on there? What's the context? What's the history? Today, I'm going to ask Francesca Marino to take us through all of that. Remember, she wrote a big book on Balochistan, Balochistan Bruised, Battered, and Bloodied. You can read that book written by her, which gives all of this context. But in this interview, she will talk about what's really going on in Balochistan. Miss Marino, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to begin by asking you your understanding of what's going on at this point in time in Balochistan, because this train hijacking seems to have taken the long-standing feud and conflict to a whole new level.
Yes, sure. As it is now on fashion to say, it does not happen in a vacuum. It is the latest point of a situation going on that has been going on for the past 70 years. To give a minimum historical context, Balochistan has been illegally occupied by Pakistan in 1947. I say illegally for a reason. Whether the Khan of Kalat had been forced or not to sign the instrument of accession, it does not matter, not really matter, for a simple reason. Kalat was a constitutional monarchy. The Khan did not have the power to sign for himself. Every decision should have been endorsed by the parliament. The parliament refused twice to endorse it. Since then, it was forcefully dissolved. So the whatever accession is illegal. Said this, for the past 70 years, there have been a number of revolts. There have been also serious attempts to coexist inside Pakistan. It did not work. It did not work because Pakistan always behaved in Balochistan more than as co-citizen, as an occupier. Balochistan is de facto an occupied country, an occupied land, and then a genocide started, a cultural one. On the you can compare it to what China did to Tibet and is doing to Tibet in schools with the language and so on, and a physical genocide. The last revolt started during Musharraf time. Mind, Nawab Bugti, who was killed by Musharraf, and then that was the turning point. Nawab Bugti, in the past, had sided with the Pakistani side in sense, let's coexist, till he realized it was impossible. So in the past 15 years, enforced disappearances, kill and dump, exploitation of resources, another occupation, this time by China, half of Balochistan has been sold to China, and in the name of so-called development. Baloch did not benefit of anything. By the way, not even Pakistan is benefiting, because the China just gives them peanuts in exchange for the mines, for water ports, for the so-called CPEC. So there's a faction. I mean, you have no other choices. You start to fight. In the beginning, it was, you know, self-made guerrilla. Now is a war. MBLA has become a proper army, trained, well armed, with brilliant strategists, because this is a brilliant operation under a purely strategic and military point of view. And yes, it's a turning point, because they proved their capacity. I mean, it's not the first time they do it, but they are keeping the Pakistani army at bay since 2 days, whatever Pakistan says, because the main thing Pakistan is doing is a disinformation campaign, claiming victory.
I want to ask you a couple of things about what you mentioned. One, of course, it is important for people to know that Balochistan alone is about 40% of Pakistan's territory, but it is sparsely populated. Most of Pakistan's nearly 200 million people are packed into Pakistani Punjab, Sindh, and other provinces. Balochistan doesn't have that many people, but it's a vast area. It's 40% of the land territory. Also, Balochistan has many minerals, including gold. The famous mines, the Reko Dig mines, so to speak, are in Balochistan, and there's been a lot of conversation about how much gold could come out of the Reko Dig mines and so on and so forth. And also, as you mentioned, one of the most important parts of China's Belt and Road Initiative goes through Balochistan in what is known as CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And, this has been the great dream to connect and create a land route from Xinjiang right up to Gwadar, via Balochistan to the Gwadar port. There's been a big airport that has been created there, but it has really not taken off. China has invested millions of dollars in it, but has faced constant opposition, including violent opposition, leading to the deaths of Chinese personnel there from Balochistan. So this is a major disaster, not just for Pakistan, but also for China.
Yes, it is. Of course, China CPEC is like everywhere else. I mean, the so-called Belt and Road Initiative is a colonial project. Is a colonial project in Gwadar. Gwadar has been practically occupied by China and changed into an open-air prison. Baloch are practically prisoners in their own land. Most of them cannot access water, cannot reach the sea. But it's a failed operation for the simple reason. Chinese thought to attract foreign investments in Gwadar. I researched extensively on it. It was they were trying to launch it the next Dubai, and a place also. Yes, all their websites were advertising the high-level security in gated colonies, so people could live peacefully. This means it's not peaceful at all, of course. Golf clubs, shopping malls, But the only thing they succeeded in doing were Chinese temples and gated Chinese colonies. There's a very interesting thing. You mentioned the airport. The airport maybe got 3 planes since it has been built, like Wadar Port, since it is operative, maybe got 20 ships, almost nothing. But Wadar Port, like all the other Chinese ports, have been built with a double purpose. It can be used as a commercial port and as a military port. Apparently, in the past months, voices and also documents were circulating that Pakistan, desperate because of the debt with China and because clearly CPEC is not working, agreed to give China a green light to use Gwadar as a military port. And this would be a geopolitical game changer, because nobody wants to see Chinese troops in front of the Oman Gulf, a few kilometers from Iran. And don't forget the interests of Americans, both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. So this would be a game changer. In all this, Baloch did not and will not benefit of anything. All the development projects in Gwadar, both public and private, are owned by Chinese and by Punjabi, mostly military, retired army people, wives of army people, and so on. Baloch are not even workers because they bring workers from China or from Punjab.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit also about what happens next. But before that, you mentioned something, and I want you to put this in perspective. You mentioned the killing of Nawab Bugti. Now, this was a major turning point. Many say the killing of Nawab Bugti was a turning point in Pakistan's history. Certainly, it was a turning point in Musharraf's history. Talk to us a little bit about what really happened there.
What really happened? The Pakistani narrative is Nawab Bugti was hiding in the mountain leading the revolt, leading an armed revolt. Nawab Bugti was in his 80s with a limp, not really somebody who could climb mountains. He has been executed, plainly executed. Then they said he was killed during an encounter in a mountain. They never gave his body. All what they found was what was given back to the family, where the rim of his glasses and his watch intact after a blast in a cave. So it was an execution. See, and the strategy did not change since Musharraf time. Basically, Pakistan does not want to deal with Baloch, does not want to deal with Balochistan and with their issues. They are just trying to repress and to suppress any kind of dissent and any kind of voice. Don't forget, Nawab Bugti's voice was a moderate voice. A constitutional one. See what they did. And since then, they are systematically trying to, again, to use a very old-fashioned expression, ethnic cleansing Balochistan. They don't want Baloch there. They started to import Punjabis, Taliban, whatever suits them. They even tried the religious card. I mean, Baloch are widely secular. They tried with the religious card, importing mullahs. It did not work. They just did not understand. They don't understand that is not going to work. And 15 years of repression gave birth to this BLA, not only BLA, to BLF, to BRAS, to the umbrella uniting all the fighters groups into more and more fighters, which are not anymore what they were in the past. They are educated. They are independent thinkers, and they will not give up. They are not going to give up because they are fighting for their life and for their land. Pakistani army is just fighting for all the black money it gets from Balochistan and from other regions.
A lot of people don't know the kind of stuff that used to happen to people in Pakistan if they spoke about this Baloch issue. I'm thinking, of course, of the infamous killing of Sabine Mahmood in Karachi. Sabine was a prominent human rights activist, and really her organization or her cafe T2 in Karachi was one of the most famous progressive places where all kinds of people, authors and journalists and artists would gather. And in fact, Sabine was hosting a conversation, really a panel discussion of sorts, about what was happening in Balochistan and how many of Baloch activists would simply disappear with no trace of them. And the moment she came out of T2 in Karachi after this program, she was basically killed by quote unquote unknown assailants. And we still don't know what really happened. It was a shocking, and because she was part of the Karachi educated elite, it reverberated across the country as a warning to anybody who wanted to talk about this issue on what would be their fate.
Yeah, they killed Sabine in cold blood in a car. They not only this, because after Sabine, they got even nastier. They killed Sajid Hussein in Uppsala, Sweden. They killed Karima Baloch in Canada. They sent killers to kill other people in Netherlands. They threatened to kill other activists living in UK. Have been detained in Karachi for the same reason. Balochistan, whoever touches Balochistan, according to their clever mind, is gonna die. And yes, you were quoting, she was part of the educated elite. The educated elite of Pakistan, frankly, is doing a big show of supporting Balochistan. But then at the end of the day, nothing happens. I mean, countries, yes, Pakistan is a fake democracy, but still, you are going to the polls. Make your voice heard. Go in the streets. It does not happen. And the result is this kind of strategy, which has been started in Balochistan, in the past few years, it's spreading all over Pakistan. They are dealing in the same way with Pashtun. They are dealing the same way with Sindh. enforced disappearances have become a new normal in Pakistan. Civilians are tried in military courts, which means no lawyers, no formal accusations, nothing. Is another way of disappearing. And then there are the proper killings. Then they throw the bodies in the street with signs of torture. And it does not happen only to men, not anymore. They do it with children, they do it with women. What they do to women is even worse. But what it is astonishing is the sense of impunity they have. See now with the Jaffa Express. The real story is BLA released immediately women, children, and civilians. They kept army people. Army people mind in Balochistan, army and intelligence people usually travels in plain clothes. First of all, to disguise themselves. Second thing, because so Baloch fighters can be accused of killing civilians. They are not civilians, army people. So they are holding hostages, only army people. And they are trying to talk to the government, release political prisoners, release all the disappeared. What they did yesterday was bombing their own soldiers. This is what they did. Not only they disappeared for a couple of hours, another number of activists in Balochistan, then they were released. Then they went on with the military action. A huge number of their people, of soldiers, have been killed. They just don't care. Cannon fodder. They can die. They will thump their chests saying, we are the best army in the world. We will not give up.
Repression. A lot of people also don't know the history of this, which you were mentioning, Miss Marino. The Khanik who actually signed the instrument of accession of Balochistan with Pakistan. In fact, like you said, number one, he didn't have adequate powers to do so. Number two, Balochistan was never part of any structured, broader deal with the British administration. In fact, Balochistan had a independent agreement with the British administration. It was not part of a wider subcontinental agreement with the British administration. Neither was it part of a broader Indian agreement with the subcontinental with the British administration. Therefore, this was an independent agreement that they had with the British administration, and therefore this entire coming together with Pakistan was even more questionable because I think the Balochs have disagreed and pushed back against this forced coming together with Pakistan right from the beginning.
Okay, the story is very interesting. When the partition was decided, yes, you know better than me, the independent states were given choice to join India, join Pakistan, or stay independent. The Khan of Kalat decided for independence and went to Delhi to sign an agreement for independence with his lawyer, who was Mr. Ali Jinnah. So the agreement was signed. Kalat was going to be independent. Few months later, Jinnah, who had then founded Pakistan, was the founder of Pakistan, started to pressure his former client. Join Pakistan, join Pakistan, join Pakistan. He refused. He sent the army. The army started to invade the nearby provinces, entered Kalat. But as I said, Kalat was a constitutional monarchy. So yes, they pressure the Khan. Somebody says with a gun, somebody says with words, whatever it was. He signed accession to Pakistan, but as I already said, it was illegal because it was not endorsed by the parliament. But yeah, it was an act of deception done by Ali Jinnah.
Let me also ask you, what happens next in Balochistan? With each passing day, the Pakistani army is not being able to control the region. In fact, de facto, many people argue that large swaths of Balochistan are already not under Pakistani administrative control. And this latest hijacking of the train takes all this to a whole new level. Do you think that, in a sense, the Chinese are also washing their hands of obviously a very bad investment with no end in sight to this violence?
Chinese don't have many other choices. I mean, either they send their troops into Pakistan to invade physically Balochistan, or there's nothing more they cannot do. There's nothing much they can do. Actually, Chinese contractors have been already allowed in Pakistan to protect Chinese interests. But again, it is not an army. They cannot do more than this. Yes, they can protect Chinese, the Chinese colonies, Chinese enclavements, and so on. But otherwise, it's up to Pakistan. And it's up to Pakistan to protect its country. And what is amazing is that the army and the ISI, I mean, they kept calling BLA and all the other Baloch groups terrorists. Now, what happened in this last case was that BLA released all civilians, okay, kept soldiers. What the Pakistani army and ISI do personally or through the so-called death squads, because in Balochistan they have death squads at the proxies of the intelligence, kidnapping and killing women, children, old people, civilians. Now tell me, who's the terrorist? Who's the terrorist? Years ago, there was a think tank in UK who called ISI the biggest terrorist organization in the world. Who's the terrorist? Who behaves like a terrorist? And the army that in theory should protect its own people never won a war against another army, but yes, is very good in killing its own people, the same citizen they are supposed to protect. Because yes, Baloch want independence, but till they gain it, they are Pakistani citizens.
I'm also going to ask you, you mentioned this in your earlier comments. Pakistan is not restive only, or only Balochistan is not the only province that is restive in Pakistan. The entire Pashtun belt, or what is now being called Pashtunistan, which borders Afghanistan, is restive. And there is a lot of problems there. Sindh is restive. In fact, I would put to you that even the border with Iran is restive. So, there are all kinds of issues that are cropping up. Fundamentally, in a sense, the only place that the Pakistani administration seems to be fully in control to a degree is Punjabi Pakistan, or Pakistani Punjab, so to speak. Where do you see this go in the coming days and months? Because there seems to be a lot of crisis, cropping up in many other regions. What does this mean for Pakistani sovereignty in the days, months, and years to come?
See, they are just lucky that the only ones actually wanting independence are Baloch. The other ones are fighting for their rights of citizens. I mean, take Pashtuns. They don't take arms. They did not start fighting. They don't want independence. They are just asking to be treated as citizens instead of cannon fodder, third-rate citizens, instead of being, again, an occupied land. I mean, the same for Sindh, same for Gilgit-Baltistan. Don't even mention POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. There's unrest there too. Of course, it does not, because it does not come into the news, because they are very good in repression. So they repress news, they repress voices, they repress people, but the unrest is there. And the more they try to put a lid on it, the more they try to deal with it with weapons, the more it will backfire. See, if you put a lid on a boiling pan, it will blast.
Let me also ask you, there was all this talk about the Rakodeg mines and other mineral wealth of Balochistan, and how, where if mining activity happens there with wide scale, there will be economic development, and in a sense, that could be the path to ensuring a certain peace in the region and greater, integration between Balochistan and the rest of Pakistan. Somehow that hasn't gone anywhere. There was a lot of talk in between a few years ago about, as I keep saying, the Rakodeg mines, gold there, and so on and so forth. Not much has moved there. Why do you think that's true?
Because okay, if you're talking in terms of development and wealth for the region, no, because all the mines, not only Rako, but all the mines are practically countries in themselves. Baloch cannot go even closer. Roads have been made only to go there. There's a very high security, not even for the rest of Pakistan. You can go, you cannot get inside. You cannot get inside of any mine unless they'll bring you there, the army will bring you there to show you what they want to show. The money is not going anywhere except in the pockets of Chinese, an army or army-related people. There's another problem, and the problem is the overmining and the black mining they are doing. Because on record is one thing, off record is different. The trucks go to Karachi. There are rare minerals, rare earths, which they were not supposed to mine, but they do. And they go hiding into trucks through Karachi port straight to China. Who benefits of that? For sure, not Baloch.
My last question then, Ms. Marino, where do you see Balochistan go from here? Because now the battle has, gone up a notch, as it were, after this train hijacking. Do you think, realistically, do you think Pakistan will be able to hold on to Balochistan? Or do you think, in a sense, it may take a few years, but this is really, in a sense, end game?
I think it's an end game, but it's not up to Baloch, and it's not even up to Pakistan only. It's a wider thing. First of all, no group trains itself, right? They are very well trained, very well armed. Now, why now? And by whom? Yes, Pakistani say India, forget it. They perfectly know. And they perfectly know also this is part of a wider game. Is part of a wider game, is complex. I think also the Gwadar issue is very important in a wider sense. Let's not use the old expression, great game, and so on. But, as I said, nobody wants to see their China militaries. And if helping Baloch independence will suit the interest of somebody else, it will happen.
I understand what you're alluding to, and perhaps, now is not the time to spell it out. But yes, absolutely, you're right. Who wants to see the Chinese take over Gwadar? Nobody wants to see the Chinese take over Gwadar. And this then will become more and more restive as days go by. Sorry, you were about to say something. Please finish.
I was about to say Pakistan cornered itself. Once a Pakistani diplomat told me, "Oh, do you know you are helping to break my country?" I told her, "Well, you don't need any help for this. You are perfectly able to do it yourself." And they have cornered themselves. The suicidal politics. So.
Quite right. Well, we will, of course, look at this very keenly in the days, months, and years to come to see what really happens in the Balochistan struggle for independence, what happens to China's investment in CPEC, and what happens to Pakistan as a whole. Ms. Francisco Marino, thanks very much for your time. And thank you for sharing your expertise and thoughts on the Balochistan fiasco unraveling in Pakistan at the moment. Thanks indeed.
Okay.